SosKaid felt the jagged edge of the long-decayed metal dig into her fragile frame as she tried in vain to bury her shoulder blades even deeper into the corner of the doorway. The reverberating blend of the mechanical saw, the recorded voice of the off-puttingly polite security bot, and the screams of the young boy who had rescued her had all fallen silent. She rubbed her tear-crusted eyes and tried to get hold of her hyperventilating fear, repeating to herself for an uncountable time the words of her father. Control the fear. Use it. Sharpen your senses and steady your aim. Survive. Because war never changes. And make no mistake, in this world, we are always at war. Hello and welcome to this first episode of A Wasteland Story, a solo RPG adventure set in the brutal, dark, and occasionally hilarious post-apocalyptic world of Fallout. Fallout is this world that I'm intimately familiar with. It was the first proper video game that I played and became completely engrossed in when I was just a wee wastelander. Solo role-playing, on the other hand, or any role-playing for that matter, is something I'm a complete newbie at. But that's okay. I'll be figuring it out as we go along, using the Fallout 2D20 RPG system from Modiphius, as well as the mythic 2E GM Yourself system. If you don't know what either of those things are, then that's okay too. I'll link them both in the show notes of the episode, and to be frank, you don't need to know a damn thing to follow along with this story. This is not a review of these systems, it's not an instruction of these systems, because basically, I'm just going to get on wandering, getting rules wrong along the way, and I'll explain relevant details about these things as they come up when it makes sense to do so. But if you are interested in learning more, there's a wealth of content online about how all these things work, a few of which I enjoyed. I'll link in the show notes. So, with the Mr. Handy housekeeping out of the way, let me tell you a bit about what this thing is. The idea in a Mentats tin is that I'll be playing through the yet unwritten story of a young wastelander, SosKaid, as she tries to find her way in the world, following the narrow escape of a raid on her settlement. Lost and alone, SosKaid will learn how to survive in the wasteland and presumably become tied up in all sorts of intrigue, danger, and questionable characters along the way. The cool thing is, I have no idea what's going to happen. I had a character and a really loose setup in mind, and the dice and my interpretations are what is going to tell the story as it flows and mutates in all sorts of unexpected ways. You're going to hear a combination of audio that was picked up from the table while actually playing, just recorded using my phone, and then going back into the proper scripted voiceover stuff that I worked out later. So join me, PJ, and SosKaid to see what happens in A Wasteland Story. This is the story of SosKaid, although we're not yet sure if that is her real name. A young girl who is lost and alone in the Fallout universe. She's escaped a terrible attack on her... Opening her eyes, SosKaid took in some of the scene in front of her. A security bot lay crumpled on the floor, its robotic arms wrapped in a macabre embrace around the figure of a young boy wearing the familiar garb of the Brotherhood of Steel Initiates. The security bot was clearly disabled, the last few dying sparks jumping from the tarnished metal of the machine, their feeble light briefly illuminating the unmoving face of the bloodied figure next to it. She got to her feet, dropping the loose backpack from her shoulders as she cautiously knelt in front of the boy, looking for any clue for who he might be. Okay, so let's ask a few questions first. We have, using Mythic here, we have the main thread is to escape the building. So far the characters are the facility itself, the security forces within the facility, and obviously this boy. So let's start by asking, let's start by asking his name. Let's find our fate chart here. Okay. So I think this is probably a 50-50 chance as to whether this boy is SosKaid and that she will assume his identity as a way to maybe get into the Brotherhood of Steel, or whether he's just someone else. So let's first ask, with 50-50 odds, is this boy named SosKaid?
So the way this works is, when I encounter something in the story of which I'm unsure of the outcome, I'll roll some dice and consult a chart in order to interpret what happens. Much like in a traditional RPG where you would ask the GM what happens. The main driver of these charts in Mythic is called the Fate chart, where, based on what I think the likelihood of something happening is, I will roll against that number to see if it happens or not.
That is a 67. So no, this boy's name's not SosKaid. Okay, so let's find a name for the boy then.
The other type of chart is a meaning chart, which I can roll on to get a couple of words that I can put together and interpret. This might be for coming up with a name, the description of a location, or the motivations of a certain character, for example.
The boy's name is... 61 is a number, and 6 is an animal. Okay, so maybe this is like his Brotherhood of Steel code name. So let's roll what the number is. 6. Let's say the boy's name is Six Fish. We're not sure what his real name is. Is the boy conscious? I think there's a high chance that the boy is not conscious. Let's go with an unlikely chance. Is the boy conscious? 40. No, the boy is not conscious.
Assuming he was dead, SosKaid fingered the cloth badge stitched to the arm of his uniform. Standard Brotherhood of Steel insignia and the codename Six Fish. From what her father had told her about the Brotherhood, she knew that this codename would align to a real name in their encrypted system. She let out an involuntary gasp and jumped back as the boy moved slightly and groaned before further slumping sideways against the wall.
So SosKaid needs to decide whether she's just going to run, whether she's going to try and help the boy.
SosKaid stood, frozen in place, half expecting the boy to wake up and attack, but he didn't move. A few tense seconds passed as SosKaid got her breathing under control.
I think that she's panicked, but she doesn't see any immediate danger, and so she is going to try and help the boy.
He looked so young, not much older than her. She had to at least try to help him.
So let's see if she can do a medicine check. So she's just going to rip his shirt and she's just going to see if she can get the blade out of him and stem the bleeding. Let's see where the blade got him. In the head. Okay, so this boy has a severe slash across his head. That's why he's unconscious. And she's going to see if she can stem the bleeding at all. We're going to do a medical check.
SosKaid looked at the Brotherhood Initiate. A broken piece of the security bot's blade jutted out of the boy's shoulder, clearly having clipped his head on the way. It was amazing this boy was still alive, but for how long, SosKaid wouldn't care to guess.
So to see if she can actually... I think it's safe to assume that anyone can stop the bleeding a bit. So she's going to wrap something around his head, and he remains unconscious for now.
With the help of her knife, she cut away a piece of the boy's uniform, tying it in a tight knot around his head. He looked almost comically like one of the insanely smiling children in the pre-war dentist poster she had in her room as a kid. 2:30, time for the dentist, printed in happy bubble letters across its top. A brief flash of despair passed over her as she thought of her settlement, her family, lost to her a few weeks earlier. She'd always been told not to get too comfortable and that life in this place can change at a moment's notice, but she'd never really understood that until that day, the day it had all fallen apart. She shook off the feeling and tried to focus on the here and now. Perhaps this initiate had something useful on him.
So she is going to search him and see if he has anything useful that could help her. So let's find a Brotherhood of Steel initiate and something that they might have. 382. He's going to have a knife, Brotherhood fatigues, a laser pistol, or a 10 mil. Okay, but he does have some hollow tags.
Removing the boy's Brahmin leather belt with his 10mm pistol and knife attached, SosKaid wrapped it around herself. The boy was slight, but compared to her slim frame, he had a good few inches on her waistline. She'd have to make a couple of extra holes in the belt later, so for now, she slung the belt Miss America sash style around her shoulder. Another poster from her childhood room. Shaking off the thought of home for the second time in as many minutes, she remembered what her father had said. Run, don't look back, never look back. She never expected to last long out here, especially not with just the clothes on her back and a few trinkets as she ran from the village, but she'd made it so far, somehow, without incident. Until the facility, that was. SosKaid felt a little safer finally having secured a weapon, and she knew how to use a gun.
So I think the boy needs to wake up now so we can figure out what's going on.
As she started looking through the boy's bag, he groaned again and this time opened his eyes.
See what his personality is. He is angry, but responsible, which is why he saved her in the first place.
The boy gasped and pushed himself feebly back further against the wall before collapsing again. His eyes seemed to focus, seeing SosKaid for the first time.
And let's see what he says. Trust, inform. Okay, so he's trusting of her straight away. It's clear to him that she's not a threat. And so he needs to inform her about something, the urgent mission, that why he was there. Perhaps he got broken off from his fire squad. It's odd that he would be there alone. So Brotherhood of Steel, they're always looking for technology, to rescue the technology and to keep it away from people or things in the world that they don't believe should have access to it. And so he's there on his own mission. Let's look at his motivations. 71, pain, and 18 is diminish. Okay, so he was hurt. I think the Brotherhood, his squad were attacked outside the facility. I think it's likely that they were super mutants because the facility is where the FEV virus came from, which is where super mutants were born. So we'll just say they were attacked by super mutants outside. He managed to escape into the facility. Did any of his squad survive? I think if he ran away alone, I think it's very unlikely that any of his squad survived. They definitely, so that's an extreme no. They definitely did not survive. In fact, they were completely wiped out, all of them dead. And I think that means as well that the super mutants weren't even hurt. So the super mutants are still outside. That's why we can't run out straight away. I'm going to add them as a character list.
With the mythic system, there's also a way in which random events will be triggered and involve characters or locations that have been significant in the story before, helping hold a logical narrative thread as the story progresses. We'll see how that turns out.
Super mutants are outside. The boy managed to escape, went out of the frying pan into the fire, saw this young girl being attacked by a security bot, managed to take down the bot but get hurt himself. The reason that they were there in the first place is to hide from mistrust. So perhaps his unit were actually in trouble with the Brotherhood of Steel, and they were out there trying to prove that they were not deserters or something like that. Okay.
Please, whoever you are, you have to tell them. You have to tell them we found the FEV, or it'll all be for nothing. SosKaid hesitated, and then said that she didn't want any trouble or to get involved. It doesn't matter. You are involved, because I'm the only one left who knows the source of it, and I don't think I'm going to make it.
Let's see if she can heal him. If she can heal him, he lives. If she can't, he dies.
As if to prove his point, the boy finished the sentence with a sticky gurgle and slumped unconscious again. SosKaid knew he didn't have much time left and inspected the boy's head to see if she could stem the bleeding a little further and maybe stabilize him.
She doesn't know much about medicine, so she's going to heal him on a 5. 1 success. She does not heal him. Okay, so the boy dies.
She swore under her breath as she tried ineffectually to help the boy. He made one final attempt to draw that breath as his eyes shot open, never blinking again.
6 fish dies.
As she was about to leave, SosKaid noticed the boy's hand clutch for something around his neck before his body had stopped moving. Through his shirt, she could recognize the angular shape of the Brotherhood of Steel holotags. She'd once found similar holotags forgotten in the bottom of a drawer of her father's workbench.
She takes his holotags.
She gently pulled them from around his neck and inspected them. Codename, Sixfish. Rank, Initiate. Birth name, something beginning with S. The rest of the name was unreadable due to a combination of damage, grime, and rapidly blackening blood. She pocketed the tags and went to work on getting the Initiate's outer uniform off him.
And his gun and his knife. That's how she gets his... and his clothing.
It wouldn't offer much protection, but it would fit over the thin vault suit her mother had given her and would be better than nothing.
So she's basically dressed up like him now.
Who knows? Perhaps it might even be beneficial to pass herself off as a Brotherhood in some settlements. Or get her killed, for that matter. The boy was dead, but nothing had changed. The pursuers that had driven her there apparently had not tracked her, and now she had to keep moving. It was a long journey north yet to Vancouver, the only place she'd ever been told she still had family. Her uncle's last known whereabouts. She had to get out of here.
Okay. She's going to go to the door that she came in, and she's going to look outside and see if she can see anything. That'll be perception, survival. So it's going to be a 13 to see if she can tell if the super mutants are gone or not. Difficulty 1. Depending on the weather. Let us actually decide what the weather does. RPG random table weather. Okay, D10. 6, that means the weather is sunny. Okay, so it's a difficulty 1 to see if she can tell whether or not the mutants have already gone, and she is succeeding on a 11. So that's another complication. She does succeed, but there is a complication. So she succeeds on telling if they're there. I think the complication is that they are there, and maybe they've spotted her.
SosKaid froze. As her eyes adjusted to the sunlight, she thought, perhaps naively, that she was in the clear. But as her eyes focused, she saw 3 massive silhouettes and heard the faux femme-like chuckle of a super mutant.
In her blind spot, she turns to the side and sees the super mutants sort of picking up the bodies of these Brotherhood fire team that they've taken down. And as they're doing it, they're a fair distance away, but they do spot her.
SosKaid's eyes widened as she noticed the mutants noticing her.
Looks like we got another rat.
She heard the smallest mutant say in a voice like a deep pit of slime and gravel. The monstrosity broke off from the other two, who seemed more interested in the meaty prizes that they'd secured earlier.
All yours, rat,
said another dismissively as he waved a massive green hand over the back of the littler one's head. Shit, SosKaid whispered under her breath, panic starting to rise again. The peace had been very short-lived. Runt shouldered his makeshift club, a gnarled, bloody and spiky piece of scenery, and began to lumber over towards the factory entrance.
And they say, oh, look, there's another one, okay? And so she runs back into the facility, and they aren't racing after her because they know that she can't really get out of there. This is the one main entrance into the facility, and they are slowly walking up to the facility after her. She runs into the facility, and then she wants to hide.
Running up the first set of stairs she could see from the massive factory floor, she desperately looked for somewhere to hide. Surely there was something. A room, some debris, somewhere small she could crawl into and wait it out. She was good at hiding.
So hiding is going to be agility and sneak. So that is a test of 9 plus 3 is 12, and it's tagged. Difficulty 1. I think there's probably plenty of places to hide. So let's do a difficult 1. Can she hide? And she's small.
But there was nothing.
She does not successfully hide. Wow. Okay. So she runs up the stairs and she can't find anywhere that looks particularly good to hide. The place has been pretty cleared out. It was a facility that was very utilitarian anyway. So it's not that there were lots of boxes and stuff running around. Only one super mutant came into the building because she clearly wasn't a threat. She's a little girl. At this stage, by the way, SosKaid, she's only a 16-year-old or something like that. She's very small. That's why she's sort of sneaky. She can shoot and stuff because her dad taught her how to shoot and how to maintain weapons and do that kind of thing. So she's quite good at that. She obviously had a hard life, but it was in a loving family in this village until it was raided. So one super mutant comes up the stairs.
Freudian slip.
We're going to scale down the difficulty. I think it's level 1 here. So let's start with do like a third of the difficulty. So we might make it a third of the hit points for him. Maybe a third of the damage as well. So she can't find anywhere to hide.
She could hear the heavy footfalls of mutated impending doom as they rang out on the metal staircase.
Come out, wherever you is, little blue rat.
And she can hear this super mutant coming up the stairs. So she does the best she can.
Running for the nearest doorway, she figured she could at least lean out and get a couple of shots in before the mutant got to her.
She leans out of a doorway that's up there. And is there anything in the room that can help her? I think it's 50-50. 49, yes, there is something in the room that can help her. I think in the room that there is another security bot.
To her surprise, when she entered the room, there was another security bot floating quietly in the corner on its jets. She froze until she noticed that this one was holding a clipboard and not a saw.
And because it can help her, it says... It does one of its Mr. Handy sort of greetings, like, hello, welcome to the
West-Tek Facility tour. This is not your designated tour area. Please return to the front desk to find out where your next tour commences.
Your tour hasn't started yet. Please report to the front desk and see the list of tour times. And she says to it, I'd like to report some rule breaking in the facility. There is a big boy who broke away from his group without asking for permission. So can you help me? So the security bot, the Mr. Handy, says, yes, of course, it's very important that the West-Tek Facility visitors always follow the rules.
West-Tek Safety Policy Article 12 states that unaccompanied children must be returned to the front desk and remain supervised until the offspring is retrieved by a registered parent or guardian. For the ensured safety of the unsupervised child, non-compliance with this directive will be met with unnecessary force. Could you please describe the unaccompanied minor?
Being escorted out of the building, any resistance will be met with force. Okay, so she says, okay, well, he's coming up the stairs now behind me. You need to go and escort him back out.
Big boy and green, you say. Thank you for reporting this infraction. Your cooperation is appreciated. As the robot floated its way towards the door, SosKaid readied her pistol and peeked out around the corner. She could see the hulking mass of the mutant pulling out his large and twisted piece of pipe and concrete as it rounded the railing of the staircase and saw the Mr. Handy coming towards it.
So the bot goes out into the hallway, and as the mutant comes up the stairs...
Ha ha, little rat found a little toaster for a friend.
Guffawed Runt as he braced himself like a batsman for the robot's floating approach.
He grunts, and he's going to pull out his weapon. Let's see what He's probably the young one of the super mutants. He's got a pipe rifle, and he's got a melee weapon. So, being a super mutant, if he can smash things, that he would prefer to smash things.
Time for smash.
So he comes up. His initiative is 10. And let's see what the Mr. Handy initiative is. 17. So the Mr. Handy's going to go first.
Apparently, though, Runt's eye was out, both figuratively and literally, SosKaid noticed, as the bot bowled into him before he got a chance to swing. Ah, you must be the little rascal that lost his mummy. Don't worry, little fella, we'll have you returned in no time at all.
He's going to use his pincer to try and grab the super mutant.
The Mr. Handy extended a pincer and tried to grab the little boy's arm.
So he's going to roll. He does hit. So he's going to do 4 damage to the super mutant who had 6.
The arm, of course, was somewhat bigger and greener than the regulation-sized children arm, and with a strength that only hydraulic muscles could conjure up, the mutant's arm was nearly sliced entirely off.
Fuck.
Runt grabbed the pincer now attached to his arm and tried to crocodile wrestle it to the floor. It didn't look like he realized he was severely hurt.
Then it's going to be SosKaid's turn, and she is going to pull out this gun and try and shoot the super mutant.
SosKaid saw an opportunity. As the hulking green and red mess was distracted for a moment, she aimed her newly found 10mm in the creature's direction and jerkily pulled the trigger.
So it's +1 difficulty, but she can aim for the head. So it's going to be tagged 12 to hit him, difficulty 2. We're going to spend that action point for another one. 9, 14, 16, damn, she fails.
She flinched as the bang of the gun rang out in the empty metal space. She heard the ricochet of the bullet as it zinged harmlessly away down the hallway.
The super mutant is then going to try and break out of the grip. He breaks out on an 11, which he does not do, so he's unable to break out of the grip.
The super mutant roared as he tried in vain to wriggle free from the robot's grip.
So we go for another round of combat. The Mr. Handy isn't actually trying to kill him. He's trying to escort him out of the building very roughly.
Well now, you are a spirited little fellow, aren't you? Hold still, or I'm afraid to say there's going to be a smacked bottom.
So he starts dragging the super mutant back down the stairs. Let's see if it's strong enough. So if he can roll under 9, he's not doing any damage, but he will be able to drag the super mutant away. So he can't, and he gets a complication. So as he tries to drag the super mutant away, he unsuccessfully does it and actually falls over, and the super mutant lands on top of him and manages to get out.
Whoopsie daisy, said the robot as it fell with Runt on top of him.
You've opened your last can, shiny man.
Growled the mutant as he raised his club to try and smash the robot's sensors in.
So starts bashing it with its board. Let's see if he does it. Yes, it does. And he's going to do 6 physical damage. 6 dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The Handy had 15 hit points. Half of that rounded up is 8. So he smashes it. He completely smashes it to bits.
There was a depressing little sound like a record player running out of juice as the Mr. Handy's cheerful protestations wound down to a sad crackle. Grinned at the super mutant as he continued to smash the hapless robot into so much pot metal, apparently enjoying himself too much to appreciate the severity of his situation.
And SosKaid gets a shot in. It's going to be easier to do now because he is prone on the ground. So we are going to aim for the head again. So it's going to be a difficulty 1 now because she's pretty much point blank. She's far enough away that he can't reach her, but he's down on the ground. He's prone. So it's difficulty 1 aimed at the head, hitting on a 12.
Time seemed to slow as SosKaid took a breath and concentrated on what her father had taught her as a kid from his military training with the Brotherhood. Breathe steady, aim true, squeeze when you're sure. She sighted at the huge but unprotected backside of the creature's head and squeezed.
Yes, we finally hit it. And we do 4 damage. So we do 2 damage, which is exactly what he had left. So as this super mutant is smashing this Mr. Handy, SosKaid manages to get a shot into the back of his head. She's now used 2 ammo, taking her to 21 ammo. But she does manage to kill him.
Runt slumped forward onto the faintly crackling robot as the echo from the shot faded to silence. She waited, listening for any other sign of movement in the facility. And after a few minutes, her breathing began to settle and she decided to see if there was anything useful on the cuddling corpses.
So she loots the super mutant. She picks up his pipe rifle and slings it over her back. This is good. And she finds 10mm ammo. So pipe rifle.
SosKaid wrinkled her nose and her stomach gave a churn as she pulled an ammo pouch and an improvised rifle off the mutant formerly known as Runt. She kicked the club to the side as she would have no way of even lifting, let alone wielding it. She didn't know if the smell was a post-vital evacuation or some kind of disgusting muty cologne.
Is there anything of value on the Mr. Handy? I mean, it was pretty smashed. I think it's unlikely. No, she doesn't find anything of value on there.
A quick look at the Mr. Handy told her there'd be nothing salvageable from him, and so she collected herself and went back down the stairs to figure out how the hell she could get out of this accursed place.
Okay, so that's the end of the scene. She was unhurt.
So Mythic has this thing called the chaos factor, which is a neat little mechanism that emulates the rising and falling tension that a GM would naturally introduce into a narrative, sort of allowing it to breathe and be dynamic. And it does this by having a number that dictates how chaotic things are. The higher the chaos factor, the more likely a fake question is going to be a yes. The less control your character has in a scene, the higher the chaos factor goes, making things get wilder until things naturally calm down again.
I feel like that was more in her control, so we're going to bring the chaos factor back down to 6. Now, the question is, the expectation for the next scene.
At the end of every scene, you adjust the chaos factor accordingly and set up what the next expected scene is going to be. That expectation is then tested to see if it plays out as you expected.
So I think the expectation is that when this first super mutant doesn't come back, the other mutants are going to come in. So, decide how you think the next scene will begin. So the expected scene is that the other ones are going to come in. So then we roll a d10. That is a 2. So it's an interrupt scene. Whew.
You then roll a single d10 to see how the scene plays out. And if you roll equal or under the current chaos factor for the scene, it'll either be altered or interrupted entirely.
So the 2 super mutants outside, they hear the gunfire, and as they start to walk towards the building, they get ambushed by the Brotherhood of Steel outside. But they don't know SosKaid is there. They do know that one of the members that they came to rescue is not there, so they will probably come looking.
Heading back downstairs to the external doorway, much more carefully this time, SosKaid peeked out to see what had become of the remaining mutants. The 2 brutes were still more or less doing the same grisly task of bagging gore, with all the apparent enthusiasm of packing a lolly bag. One looked up and noticed her by the doorway.
Hey, it said, it's the
The falling apart and general splattering of the 2 super mutants interrupted the rest of its sentence, and seemed to happen before she even heard the whirring of a laser minigun. SosKaid couldn't see anyone behind the ruined vehicles of the car park, but she knew the sound of a knight when she heard one. "Filthy scum," came the amplified-like voice from the T-45 power armor. "Come, let's see if that boy made it inside. Retrieving the map is the highest priority." SosKaid heard the heavy footfalls start toward her position. She swore again before they rounded the corner. She slipped back into the facility. And that was it, our first chapter of SosKaid's story in the Wasteland. Will she escape the facility unscathed? Will she accidentally get involved in a political plot involving mutants, betrayal, ghouls, and the Brotherhood of Steel? Will she get shot in the shoulder by a foul-mouthed raider she finds not so quietly dying under a bridge? Yes, all of these things and more as we go forth alone together in a Wasteland story. Thank you for joining me today for this pilot episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to Modifius for putting out this excellent book. You can head over to their website to check out all the great Fallout content they have available, including the core rulebook, which I'm currently using for this campaign. But they also have some really cool supplements in there, which I've bought and can't wait to get into future episodes. Credit to Enon Zur and Mark Morgan, 2 composers of much of the Fallout game's official soundtracks, all of which are, as far as I can tell, and please someone correct me if I'm doing anything wrong, available in the public domain on archives.org. If you'd like to get in touch with me, please do. You can send me an email to awastelandstorypodcast@gmail.com and tell me what you think. Rules correction, story ideas, feedback, if anyone wants to do any voiceover for other characters, anything like that. This is all very new to me, and I'm really excited to see how this show develops with input from the community. I'm currently looking into putting together a little website and maybe some social stuff. I'm not sure yet. We'll just see how we go. Play it by ear, as I like to do. If you like this, please give us a rating and/or review wherever you are listening, and just as good, tell a friend. Although I started all this before the release of the new show on Amazon Prime, I am seeing there's a lot of well-deserved hype for Fallout at the moment, so maybe you know someone who might get a kick out of this, even if they know nothing about tabletop RPGs. That's it from me today, and I can't wait to tell you the next chapter of SosKaid's story in the Wasteland. And finally, in the case of nuclear fallout, just remember to duck and cover. Bye. And remember, in case of nuclear fallout, all you have to do is duck and cover. Bye.
And I think that's where we're going to end it for the first episode. Thrilling stuff.